Season 8 is finally here, and there are so many new features and changes that we have to talk about. From a new system to unlock free skins, to huge changes to characters and massive updates that will change the meta as a whole. But it says that only 20% of you are subscribed, so like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. Winter is here, and the Winter Wonderland 2023 is finally back with the new Snowball Offensive, Snowball Deathmatch, Flash Freeze Elimination, Yeti Hunt. And starting with this event, there's a new event ticket system that is introduced for players to earn tickets when they win games, and they can use those earned tickets to spend them on their choice of limited time merchandise, including legendary skins. Players can also upgrade to a premium tier to earn more tickets as they play to unlock all the content, but there's going to be more details about how this works in an upcoming blog. They're also doing slight changes to the endorsement system where it's easier to get to level 5 and the decay is reduced at level 4 and 5 so you don't lose it nearly as fast. There are now extra reticle settings for specific heroes with multiple weapon modes, so heroes that have this option are Ana, Ashe, Bastion, Lifeweaver, Mercy, Ramatra, and Widowmaker. So you can have two different crosshairs on a hero, whether or not you're like zoomed in or not, or whether or not you're in a different form. Like Bastion could have two different crosshairs in his turret form and his regular form. Now moving on to the more fundamental changes, some of these we talked about in the previous patch preview, but not all of them, and there's some really important changes here. So we're going to go over everything in case you missed something and talk about it contextually with the other changes we couldn't mention before. The maximum ultimate charge preserved on hero swap is reduced from 25 to 15%. And this is a really big deal because now you're going to have 10% less ult charge if you decide to swap after you lost a fight. At 25%, oftentimes people would walk into a fight, lose, take that 25% onto a new, better character that countered, and then all of a sudden they would snowball that advantage, and it actually gave them a somewhat of advantage, even if you lost that first fight, which just doesn't make any sense. And it was really frustrating, especially when we talk about some tanks, where you maybe walk out on a certain tank, and then they just swap to whatever big tank that counters you, or character that counters you, and they get to have like no penalty because they just get to swap away that ultimate charge. Now it's still there, so you're not going to be super heavily penalized, but you're not going to be able to just pick up what you left off, and you're probably going to have to let go of 15 to 20% of your ultimate charge that you gained in a lost fight. This makes the decision a little bit close whether or not to swap to counter all the time and pushes us away from a quote-unquote counter swapping meta. Now we do got to talk about the big Doomfist buff, and we did talk about this before, but now we get to show the change, and it's freaking crazy. I mean, look, you could be super low health, and then you pop your ultimate slam down, and then with the health that you get back plus the shields that you generate, it's just crazy. I mean, 16% more for the ultimate cost I think is a small price to pay when it makes like all of our ultimates able to be proactive. We never have to run away with our ultimates ever again. It's just such a great buff to Doomfist. I really like it, and I'm really looking forward to playing Doomfist with this new change. Next up, we do got to talk about Junker Queen Scattergun. Spread reduced by 8%, not a major change, but it is going to increase her overall DPS. Mauga is a character that is finally added to the competitive lineup, and remember, we made a video about Mauga talking about all of his problems, the fact that he was weak in many different aspects, and we presented all those problems and a lot of different ways that you could buff him, and Blizzard kind of went the route of just buffing everything. I mean, it's nuts what they did to this hero, and he is gonna mix up the meta, I promise you that. And these are all the updates he got. Base health reduced by 150, but base armor got increased by 150, so you're getting that replaced by armor. Head hit volume reduced by 15%, so a smaller hitbox. The incendiary and volatile chain guns, spread for firing both guns reduced by 15%. Fire rate multiplier for firing both guns reduced from 25% to 0%. Damage per shot increased from 4.5 to 5. Damage fall off increased from 25 to 30. Max ammo increased from 300 to 350. Movement speed penalty reduced from 20 to 15 per gun. They also fixed a couple of bugs, but for his overrun charge ability, it can no longer be interrupted by hack. The damage reduction increased from 30 to 50 freaking percent, and with cardiac overdrive, the lifesteal increased from 60 to 70%, and his berserker passive overhealth conversion rate increased from 40 to 50%. I know that these are just a lot of just freaking numbers, okay? Like just a ton of numbers, but they basically buffed this guy in every way imaginable is what they did. Remember, after Lifeweaver, when they came out with Iari, they said that they would rather release a character that is overtuned and not unplayable, and then nerf them to make them, you know, fine eventually. Like, they want to make sure that a character feels impactful and strong and doesn't feel a bit underpowered. And when we got to test him, that's what he did. He felt underpowered. He felt kind of like a stronger version of Life Reaver on release, but still not very strong. And now they're going the absolute route, which is like, we're gonna make this character freaking super strong. We're gonna supercharge all these things, and he's probably gonna be played. He's probably gonna be meta. He's probably gonna be too strong, but that's okay, because they would rather have it like this than put him in a situation where no one plays him and he doesn't have an impact at all. They can always nerf him after the fact. So this character is going to be freaking giga busted, super strong, and yeah, we don't know exactly how strong yet, because it's hard to contextualize these changes until we see them played in a competitive game, but we're gonna have to wait and see on that one. But let me know down below how you feel about the most buffed character ever. Now, we did talk about Ramatra in the preview. Some of his health got replaced with 100 armor, and then his Void Accelerator is actually a bigger projectile size, and the damage is going to increase from 4.5 to 5. This means that his base form is going to be a bit more survivable, and his poke is going to be a bit better, which is both really great things to Ramatra. Sigma, the experimental barrier regeneration rate, reduced from 100 to 85 health per second. So a slight nerf to Sigma. It's going to be harder to have that barrier uptime, but not going to fundamentally change his place in the meta, in my opinion. Now, we did talk about Winston's Tesla Cannon, where it's now gonna ignore damage reduction from armor, which is crazy for his primary fire. This is really going to help him against some problematic characters like Brig and Torb, and I think it's a really big deal. That's a nice buff to dive. Moving on to damage, we have Mei, her endothermic blaster, maximum ammo reduced from 150 to 120. Not a crazy big deal, but it is going to be a bit annoying to not have as much uptime. Soldier 76 biotic field, cooldown increased from 15 to 18 seconds. That's just a slight nerf to Soldier. You're going to have a little bit less uptime with that, but most of the time you repositioned anyways. It's not going to be the biggest deal, but Soldier was overperforming a little bit, so they just wanted to nerf him in some small but not that meaningful way. Sombra, the EMP ultimate, now locks out abilities for 3 seconds instead of 1.5, but the damage reduced from 30 to 25% of maximum health. So it's going to overall be a lot better. I mean, canceling abilities for 3 seconds is a really big deal. It gives you actually time to kill multiple targets, so EMP is going to feel a lot more impactful rather than something that you just use for tempo. And keep in mind, this is another dive character that is getting buffed, and there's quite a few of them when we talk about Doom, Winston, and Sombra, so keep all that in mind to paint a better picture. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you're asking, Torb's overload health is now increased from 75 to 100. I don't know why they did this, to be honest. I have no freaking idea why they're buffing Torb, but they are, and Torb is going to be that much more survivable because of it. Now, Tracer's Pulse Pistol's damage increased from 5.5 to 6, and this is the really kind of weird thing, because they keep doing things on the back end and in the front end where they're changing bugs and fixing things, but it looks like as of the last state of Tracer, this is just a direct buff from that. So those of you who have been playing Tracer recently, you will most likely feel this as a insane buff. It's going to feel a lot better on Tracer. If there's any updates to that they give us after the fact, I'm definitely going to say it down below, because they might further change this. It feels like they are doing a lot of weird bug related things that are changing Tracer's power level, but right now Tracer at 6 damage per shot is feeling really good, and I think this is gonna be a really big deal to making Tracer more meta and more powerful after feeling a little bit lackluster with all the Suzus and characters that can kill you and threaten you and immortalities and all that stuff, really making it hard to live as a Tracer in the new Overwatch 2 meta. Now, as far as support changes, we have Baptiste Biotic Launcher primary fire ammo reduced from 45 to 37. A little bit less uptime for your primary fire to do damage. Not a big deal, but it's still notable to talk about. Briggs Whip Shot damage reduced from 80 to 70. Also not a super big deal, but it is something important to know. Whip Shot isn't going to do quite as much burst damage, and her combo isn't going to do as much as it used to. And the last up for Kiriko, her healing projectile speed is going to increase from 14 to 18 meters per second, and that's going to mean it's going to get to your target a bit faster. But the protection Suzu invulnerability duration reduced from 0.85 to 0.65 seconds. That is a super big deal. I mean, look how fast this fades away. Oftentimes it felt like it would linger a little bit, and there would be this awkward moment where, especially when I play dive characters, I go in on a Kiriko, she Suzus, and I'm just kind of sitting there for a second waiting for the Suzu to end. But now that Kiriko is going to have to time it far more perfectly, or else it will fade and then not actually deny what they're trying to deny. But they compensate this by making the healing explosion increase from 40 to 80 when they're cleansing different effects like toxins or nade. And that means that if you're using it for a very specific purpose, you're going to get more benefit, and you have to time it better if you're using it to react to like people engaging on aggression. So that's kind of against like dives and things like that. It has to be more properly timed. So yeah, overall, I think that this is going to be kind of a nerf to Kiriko, but I think really, really good Kirikos will still get comparable value and then maybe even more so. Now, overall, there's a lot of new content and there's a ton of crazy changes, but I think Mauga has the potential to completely change the meta with all these buffs. Will they be enough? Will he take over the meta? You have to let me know in the comments down below, but I freaking am horrified of the new Mauga meta. But I got a lot of guides coming to help you in Season 8, so smash the like, subscribe if you enjoy the content and want to see more. Thank you so much for coming by, and we'll see you next time.